Welcome to Wessex Ways, Series 2, Episode 3, I believe.
I reckon you're right, Hedley. Can I just describe the scene very quickly for our viewers? Mm-hmm. Three men sat around a tray of Ferrero Rocher. That's probably really good. So by that, we should probably announce we've got a guest today.
There is the presence of someone else in the room.
Yeah.
And the description given to me is that we have an allotment fox, although I don't think, to be frank, he's an expert in either allotments or foxes.
I don't know about the former.
Don't know.
Potentially, I think there's a few old little bits of content where there is the allotment going on, maybe.
There is, yeah. Well, we are very privileged today to have Tom from Allotment Fox. Welcome, Tom.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we've been trying to get you on here for a while. I think there's been some miscommunications and my emails have gone astray. So, yeah. So, Tom he does some fantastic videos. He does...
Not too kind.
Yeah, that's good. And very, very good. And I've been watching them for years now. And your videos centre a lot around sort of areas and sort of... where current place names derive from and so on and so forth, and also boundaries and foliage and everything, and absolutely fantastic. And you go to some of the greatest areas. I saw, recently the Deverils, that was good, and my personal favourite, of course, Lowbury Hill, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So how did you get into this? Have you been, have you got your sort of background that leads into this?
Well, directly lockdown. This is a lockdown hobby.
Oh, okay.
And so my learning of Old English comes from that. It was trying to find an interesting walk when, you're allowed out once a day.
Yeah.
And that's how that started. But the antiquarian thing, I learned at school. There were several teachers that were really into local antiquities. So
you married the two together, essentially. During lockdown, you said, hang on a minute, I love lumps and bumps in the landscape, and all of a sudden, now I'm going to... The biggest tool ever is the language of it, which is what you do, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's a bit hard to explain because it was partly antiquarian, so there's quite old-fashioned ideas about the past, about the Celtic past and so on. It's very... what I was taught was very old-fashioned, but there was one archaeologist who I was looking for a barrow and I stumbled into his work. He'd written a report that ended up on the Heritage Environmental Record.
Okay.
And he'd found it. My school teacher had found it before me, but I'd only seen a précis. I still haven't seen the final report.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about going because I knew where he lived, go around and see if I could get the full report. But he'd got dementia in the time since. So it was like, just so far away from, personal past and the larger past.
Yeah, so you reference a lot back to Saxon Land Charter.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get my head around what that is. It's some sort of document written by, is it G.B. Grundy or documents?
They're normally written by monks in 1,000 years ago too.
Okay.
But this is before we had maps, essentially.
Yeah.
Where people used to describe what belonged to them by saying, I own to the left of that tree over there, up to the top of that hill, down to the river, and that's what they wrote down to describe the land that their master owned. So it was, so they, just like today, it's really important that your deeds explain exactly what belongs to you and what belongs to your neighbours. It was the same then.
So it is literally like that. Say we own up to that hedgerow along the ridge, down to the spring in the valley, and then that over time has somehow sort of modernised into maybe some place names and stuff as well.
It has, but also a lot of it's lost as well. So and a lot of it is language that is very, very interesting. So some of those stream names are Celtic stream names that the English, when they got here, took from the Celts that were there. Before them, and they're the only record we have of them. And it's actually they are a microscope on into the deep past of the country.
So to go back, so you come lockdown, you said, "Well, I need a hobby." Mm-hmm. You already love the landscape and the bits and pieces, and you said, "Right, I now need to learn something." So you picked up Grundy's, and that's then how you got into these Anglo-Saxon charters. I say Anglo-Saxon, I guess there were different types of charters, weren't there? But a lot of these early ones are Anglo-Saxon charters, right?
They're nearly all Anglo-Saxon. There's a couple of Welsh ones,
Right.
which I've yet to get hold of because they're different. That's part of a different. It's in a different silo. So I am going to do them eventually.
Okay.
But they're Anglo-Saxon. So even though the stuff I'm looking for, like Grundy, he was looking for Roman stuff, and it was in the charters. But the Saxons weren't really interested in Roman stuff, only where it impinged on their ability to claim land.
It was a means to an end. Yeah,
it was a means
we're
to an
mentioning
end,
it because it's there, not because it's a bit of history. It's just there.
Yeah. So they ignore the boundaries, cross Roman roads and ignore them because they've already said a really well-known landmark to it that everybody knew. So they didn't need to mention they just keep going.
Yeah.
So it's very frustrating. Loads and loads of interesting stuff we've got no knowledge of at all.
Yeah.
And we know it's there because of archaeology, but they haven't made a record of it.
So much so then. So lockdown went well for you, in that sense.
Yes, I'm one of
In
those
your
mad
new hobby
people
sense.
that had a laugh. Yeah.
And then you became a little bit obsessed with it, I guess.
No, I wanted to. I suddenly realised this is the sort of thing that people were doing, that I was doing when I was a youngster, that I saw other people doing, and I realised that is a niche because there's only like 4 or 5 people who've actually done a comprehensive mapping of the landscape during the Anglo-Saxon period, and most of them are out of print and dead. So it's a niche for me to do something in the new format instead of publishing on paper in a magazine, and where they might not even have accepted me. An editor might, because I don't have an academic background.
Yeah.
I can go into new media and just go, here you go.
But you can
this
make
is it.
observations. That's the thing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen now you've used a drone as well. So the landscape, the way you you narrate the landscape is illustrated from above by what you see, which is, I'm always an advocate of drones. You know,
You should see Tom in action with the drone.
Right.
It's an event in itself, right, Tom?
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well,
Do I rave at the thing?
You do. Tom treats his drone with contempt. The 249.
Whereas I love my drone.
You care for your drone because your drone's called Alfred.
Well, the old one was Alfred.
Oh, really?
It's Arthur.
Arthur.
The new one.
I don't reckon Tom's got a name for it. Such as the contempt he treats it with.
Yeah, well, that could explain.
Literally chucks it in the air and then turns it on to get.
So I could explain why they keep leaving me, trying to escape to the next county. I've had 2 flyaways.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'm very boring. I've been doing aerial photography now for 6 years, and I haven't clipped a prop. I haven't crashed into anything, and I fly nearly every day.
I think me and Tom are
But I think
different.
that's just because I'm boring.
I used to be a health and safety officer. I used to go around and tell people, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Yet I fly into trees. I fly into the ground. I have a drone that's up the top of a cliff, and I know it's there because when I went to retrieve it, it wasn't down the bottom, and I had some footage on my phone showing the ledge and a couple of birds, and it's still up there now.
So to put you on the spot a little bit, there's a village I was christened in called Hedley, and it's Headley, and I'm Hedley. And when I asked my parents whether that's where my name comes from, they said, "Oh no, they only just realise the coincidence," which is a bit strange. Headley. There's Hartley, which I think you said in one of your videos is wood of the deer.
Yeah.
But
I
would Hedley have been derived from anything Anglo-Saxon?
From modern English, there are several things that are heads. So headlands, for example, you get the head. You get tops of some hills called. Or do you? Well, you do. Topographically, you do have hills that are known as heads on some maps.
Maybe head of a valley as well.
So it's all sorts of. There's the headland of a furrow. So in the medieval times, the point you plough your way up and then you turn round, and that's called. head something. I've forgotten.
Okay.
But it's so there's all in the medieval times there were just as many ways you can describe something with the word head as there are today. So not just topographically, all sorts of things. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it would have been good to hear how this language is strung together, because obviously we're dealing with nouns at the moment, so nouns that were used back then to describe a place, which have been developed into modern thing. But it'd be interesting to see how the sentences were actually sort of.
Well, I mean that's a good point, because when you're reading, you said to me once, the charters are written in very simple terms, which is as opposed to the poetry at the time, for example, which is using 1,000 different meanings for one thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's quite an interesting thing, because it does allow you to do your thing and then sort of transfer the language to the next one and the next one. And when you're going out afresh, you've got quite a big knowledge of all these things you've already learned from the previous.
It's a restricted vocabulary, topographic Anglo-Saxon, but poetry is an absolute nightmare. But the matter of fact you get in, say, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, that's quite simple, even though it's late Old English Anglo-Saxon. But so for example, there's a section which I often quote, which says Simli he feart und one other Engelkun Scottis other Perktas. And that's quite easy to get your head around, because what he's saying is he fought and won the English kin, other English kin, English family, other English tribes, the Scottish and the Picts. Yeah. So that's quite easy to get your, especially when it's written down, to get your head around that. That's quite simple English language. It's just 1,000 years old. But if you look at the Beowulf, for example, completely unintelligible. It's what way Gardenas. It's just means nothing. Means nothing. And and that's because our poetry today, modern poetry, is completely incomprehensible unless you care about it.
Yeah.
So it was posh even then. So So English teachers today that are teaching Old English by doing Beowulf are letting their students down, because the actual everyday English that, and I think the scribes that wrote the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, they kept it simple as well for the ruling class who perhaps might not have been as well educated as we think. They kept it simple and to be communicable. Yeah. And I think our English teachers are letting their students down by going straight to Beowulf.
Yeah.
So that's part of one of the things that I'm for, and I do cherry pick. I pick out stuff that I can explain. I can make it explicable for you.
Yeah.
Rather than choose there are loads of bits in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle that are strange as well, and then they go into more stuff that you can work out. But it's much, much more simple.
Yeah. And with that, so I've got another question. What was fascinating with me is when I looked at a charter, there was one describing a tree. Not describing a tree, sorry. It used a tree as part of a marker in this. Yes. And you think, how, in what world would somebody talk about a pear tree? Because it was a pear tree at the time. Yeah. As a mark, surely that's only got a finite lifetime. So why are you using that as a formal legal boundary? But they did, right? And
well, that tells us a couple of things. One, that these weren't meant to be that permanent, like eternal.
Right, why though?
Two, everybody knows, well, there's three things, in fact. Two, everybody knows Bill's tree. You'll see it's got the best pears that, best pears all round, and you'll know it's on the edge.
Everyone locally knows it.
Everybody knows it. So, and three, it shows that they'd felled the forests by so there's no point saying a tree is a marker if it's part of a woodland. So this sticks out somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's great, isn't it?
But it's
really great.
So as well as language, you do have other observations in your videos as well, and I'll pick one out. You did a video. No, I'm with you on this. Cold Ashton you visited, which
Yeah.
is a beautiful area just north of Bath, I think. Yeah. And there's some actually lovely hills there. And I was looking at a place to go and photograph sometime called, very nearby in the valley, called Langridge.
Yeah.
Beautiful place, not very touristy. Looks very sort of old English. It's absolutely beautiful. But while you were there, you mentioned about open access land being essentially unimproved land or farmland.
Yeah.
And that's something that sort of struck with me, because I then started thinking about every bit of open access land I know. So the one nearest me is Blueburton Hill, Lids Bank, both of which are steep, both of which are half wooded or thistled, and both of which wouldn't be very good for farming.
Yeah.
So it does seem that most open access lands are the kind of, from an agricultural point of view, the offcuts, aren't they? But from our point of view, actually, they're probably the best places. Yeah.
But also think of all the places you can think of that are the same as that, but aren't open access, and ask yourself how did the assessor not make that open access when it's the same as this other piece of open access over there?
I'm guessing it could be a quota thing. There's a certain percentage or area of land that needs to be open access land per something or other.
I think it's just a rushed, botched thing. Maybe I don't know the answer, but just like it's just a botched, right? Yeah, okay. And the farmer will protest. No, actually, I need that bit for whatever. I'm going to use it for this, that, and the other. I don't know.
They can still use them. It's like Devil's Punch Bowl up, the one up Letcombe Bassett.
Yeah.
It's open access land. It's steep, but they still graze. You know,
you
still see the farmer there. It's still used, sort of thing.
Yeah. But you can't get a tractor up there. That's the point. But I can think of loads and loads of fields you can't get a tractor up, my suspicion, I think it's a bit unfair on those farmers that had their land given over to the public, yet their neighbour got away with it, and I wonder how that happened.
Yeah.
But it's.
Yeah. Well, okay, so from my point of view, my favourite, because you've gone so many different locations, and I don't know, I will later ask you which has been your favourite, but I do have a favourite, and it is very, very local to me. A good set of binoculars, you can see my house from it, and that is Lowbury Hill.
Yeah.
No, it's I've been talking, you mentioned her as well, Summer Courts, who's doing, I mean, she's probably finished now, actually, a PhD specifically on Lowbury Man and Lowbury Lady, who were exhumed from there.
Is there a conclusion? Because I'd be very interested to know.
I will contact her. I went with her to do geophys testing up there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, Anna and I went up, and we did also resistivity. Got it. Resistivity testing in the cold and wind and everything. It takes so long. I mean, it's a full day, and you're just advancing like that, like almost like a Zimmer frame sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the results of that. But when I went up there in August, beg your pardon, 2022, when my dad died, which is why I was up there, and we had the impossibly parched land.
Yeah.
I sent the drone up, and every little feature came out, and I discovered 2 ring ditches, and there's an extra barrow. There's actually 2 barrows.
I suspect it.
Yeah, one to the south, one to the east. And let
me write that down. I can watch this back.
Hi, Tom. Make a note.
Mental back if you're listening.
But yeah, so and one of the things that struck me, again, I'm not a historian. I'm way behind you two. Was Lowbury Man, as you allude to, could have been some prince figure. And to back that up, he was buried north to south in a barrow with his treasures. And just before anyone goes digging up there, the treasures in a museum. With a sword, which, as you say, was not a pointed tip, it was a blunted tip, so that it was designed probably for the burial. So this would have been...
I didn't say that.
Oh, didn't you? Oh, I beg your pardon.
I mentioned a Roman offering, which was blunted.
Oh, I see, right, beg your pardon, So this guy was clearly quite a significant figure. Whereas Lowbury Lady, who I think was about the same time, we don't know if the two are related. There might be lots of other burials up there, so, we don't know. But she was buried east to west and flung into, and she was disfigured as well, flung into the pretty much where the walls of the Roman building were. Yeah. So that could have been even sacrificial. We don't know. That could have been anything.
So we don't know the date of either. But you sound like the first one was Bronze Age.
I think we do know the date.
Do we? I haven't got a clue.
Yeah, it's 5. No, 6 something. Isn't it?
It's something like that, and it's a couple of hundred years before the Battle of Ashdown probably happened.
Oh, so we are talking Saxon period.
Oh yeah.
I've got no idea what you're talking about.
This is no.
So I'm just kind of just listening and hoping I can pick up.
It's one of the most important. It's one of the reasons why the Ridgeway is just so massively important. Is you've got 2 princes buried, one at Scutchammer Knob, and the other one at Lowbury Hill, and they're almost definitely princes. The amount of wealth the wealth of the Lowbury man is huge. We don't know about. They only found a belt buckle in Scutchammer Knob, but we know because the other name for it is Cuichelmys Low, and he was a king or prince. I can't remember, but nonetheless. Magnificently important because they are the ancestors of the kings of England. They're a tribe of northern Berkshire that become the clan of kingship for Wessex, which becomes the clan of kingship for England. Yes. And you've got Bronze Age, Iron Age, Roman. Lowbury man is buried 10 feet from the walls of a Roman temple, So it's just astonishing. But the problem is this: if we were in Italy, all of that would be still standing now in some form. There'd be something left to look at.
Yeah.
Well, someone was describing what it would have looked at, because if you go around the area, there's lots of flint, which implies the building was flint covered. Yeah. Now I think. I might be wrong, but in a talk she did, she almost discredited the fact it was specifically a temple, because the finds that they've had there correlate with other sites, I think in Ireland or somewhere, where they weren't temples, they were some important building anyway. But it would have been a tall, almost square building, more rectangular, and it's a very prominent. I mean, it's not a high landscape, but it's a rolling landscape.
Yeah.
But it is definitely the highest point around.
Yeah.
To the point where it probably was, or could have been, the muster station for the West Saxon army for Ashdown in 871. Because it's an easy place to describe. If you're going east, it's the big round hill.
Yeah.
So, and that whole area, area fascinates, because you've got Grim's Ditch there. And one thing that's interesting that changes a lot of descriptions of what was there like the Battle of Ashdown is that the Fair Mile that runs to the north, that goes across the north of Lowbury Hill down to Molesford, where there would have been a Thames crossing, in old maps appears to be the original path of the Ridgeway. So the Ridgeway, as we know now, which is very nice, goes up Streatley Warren, which is beautiful. Yeah. Wasn't the Ridgeway.
No.
Well, he might there's a problem in that. One, we don't know. Well, let me know if you do know anything about the Fair Mile, but I know nothing about it. What I do know is it's not on a ridge.
No.
So the Ridgeway goes along a ridge all the way.
But it did cut corners, like between Liddington and Barbury. It also went down.
You had to go into a valley at some point, but you had to. That was to get to the other side. There was no hill.
Yeah, no,
so,
that's true.
So they were forced to do it. So my scepticism about Fair Mile. I suspect it might be Roman, but I don't know whether it's prehistoric. Because down by, God, I can't remember. Is it Goring? No.
Yeah. Goring and Streatley.
As in the current.
Yeah.
Accepted.
Yeah.
Ridgeway.
Yeah. So the Ridgeway National Trail currently goes down Streatley Warren into Streatley.
Yeah.
And then over the bridge into Goring, and then follows the land up to the north from there. But I can't remember the source. There was a source that was suggesting, I will dig this out, that the Fair Mile was kind of one of those sort of cut-off points going towards the easiest part to cross the river.
I'm not saying it's not. I mean, I can imagine when it's summertime, why don't we take a shortcut? Yeah. But the advantage of going... I'm making a brave attempt to defend the honour of the Ridgeway as it is, because it's such a short gap. You only have to get your feet wet for a couple hundred yards if you go the traditional way. Yeah, and that is the reason why we have ridgeways at all. One of the main reasons is to keep your feet dry.
And back then, we didn't know, the river was very different back then. It was probably lots of multiple streams, shallower, whereas now it's a defined, deeper, kind of thing. So I suppose we don't really know which part of the river would have been the easiest to cross back
It would have
then.
been forded as well. It's completely different. We've got weirs and so on that keep the depth so that boats can go up and down it.
Yeah.
But back in the day, there would have been spots where it's just fordable. You couldn't have driven a boat through it. You would have to carry the boat across it.
There's an interesting chap you might be interested in called Jason Warshall, who recreates the findings from Lowbury Hill as well and displays them. So if you look him up on Facebook, he's not very out there on social media. He is a little bit. He's probably listening to this, but he recreates all the artifacts and everything that have been found in their original kind of presumed form, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, the whole area is fascinating. You've got Grimsditch to the north, and we're currently mapping that. So I've done some drone work for Historic England for Dan Bashford to map, the Grimsditch between the A34 Bury Lane and Chain Hill at Wantage. But we've also been looking to the east as well. So I previously did a video again with Anna, and from the air you can see Grimsditch even on the unmapped sections. When it's really dry, you can just see the line.
We're talking just off the ridge, or just the north of the Ridgeway.
Grimsditch kind of tracked halfway down the scarp.
Yeah.
So you had Ridgeway at the top,
yeah,
and Grimsditch, and then Icknield all the way down in the valley, and they all kind of vaguely follow each other for some way. So
it's interesting how it's become a county boundary as well, it shows how conservative we are, because that is, to me, north of that is Berkshire, but it's not anymore. And we retreated the boundary to a Bronze Age monument, which is fascinating.
It was a big chunk taken out of Berkshire, wasn't it? Yeah. And if you speak to anyone in sort of Abingdon, Didcot area, well, God help me with Didcot, but anyone in those areas, that's a little bit older than us, they're staunch Berkshire supporters. This is Berkshire. And I got in trouble, I think I've said it before, with the Berkshire Yeomanry for accidentally labelling Uffington White Horse as the highest point in Oxfordshire, and I got shot. I had to actually rename my Instagram account from North Wessex. I was like, there are two North Wessex from Oxfordshire. I was like, so
don't listen to them. Nonsense, absolutely nonsense. It's entirely practical to have the hinterland of Oxford belong to it, but the problem is it completely denies the way things have been for 1,000 years, in exactly the same way as reading reports in the paper in hectares. I haven't got a clue what a hectare is. I know what an acre is. It's about the size of a football field. Yeah, and so we're being forced by decree of Parliament to use terminology we don't quite understand, or it has no meaning for us. So the shires were organically, they were designed, but they are organic to us.
So shire means boundary, doesn't it, or shear? Or
it's aligned with, it's related in that sense to and it's the same with the Red Shore on the Wansdyke. That's a cutting, a shear, and it's survived as Red Shore today. But I love Old English because it gives you that connection with the deep past, and it is still English. Yes, it is connected to us.
Yeah. So when you make 2 videos a week, minimum, sometimes more.
I don't do any more anymore. It was exhausting. Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, when you do that and you do it, you obviously research before, get everything ready, what you want, plan a walk. Do you ever have the urge to do, like, let's say, a deeper kind of dive into one specific subject? Like you talk about battles from that era.
Yeah.
Do you ever want to go, right, I want to work out where this happened, or... Because obviously you take a boundary, you walk the boundary, you try and spot all these things, which is great. I just wonder if you've ever had this urge to do something a big project on something that could not... I don't want to say change history, but do you know what I mean? Like, really,
I thought we might talk about this actually, because it's me and Hedley have quite a similar style. We go out into the wilderness and we show you something as we discover it. Yeah. As yours, you do your research and it seems to me that you know what you're going to tell. Yes. And you're going to tell that story in the best a narration that tells in depth what it is, and you're illustrating it with the countryside.
Yeah, 10% will be, I've actually found something I didn't expect to find, but that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Well, it's the opposite for me. I'm going on a walk because I'm too fat. I need the exercise. I need leisure, and I also want to talk to you, the public. But I don't want to spend. But it's a flaw in my character. I don't want to spend 2 weeks working on something.
And not
it's not a it's not a dissertation. It's an essay.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Completely,
And each and I think that's part of one of the interesting things about the internet is that it sort of tries to push you that way. To do a post daily is the holy grail for not for success, but it seems that's what the internet wants.
Yeah.
But it's not something I can deliver, but I can do twice weekly.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah. So if you're saying if you did something in depth, you wouldn't be out walking because you'd be spending 2 weeks researching this big thing. I just think that I've done a few little bits and pieces where I said, I don't know, Anglo-Saxon battle, whatever.
Yeah.
Which I think I looked at it once.
Yeah.
And I just thought, God, if I had the knowledge of what you have from reading Anglo-Saxon charters, I could really apply myself a lot better and make a better production based on me researching for 2 or 3 days. Do you know what I mean?
No, yours are brilliant, but they are a different ethos.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So you plan it all before. It's quite clear to me, and I'm sure I've got it right. You plan it all before you go out. You come back into the studio, show some maps.
Yeah.
Then do a cutaway to describe characters that are involved in it.
Yeah.
And then we come across dilemmas, and you explain those dilemmas, and then you conclude. And those are like dissertations.
Yeah.
But for me, for what I'm doing, it's like a vlog. It's not really that way. My plans never come out. It's like the old military phrase, that a plan only doesn't last 2 seconds in front of the enemy. I completely fail every time to deliver on what I try and do because I hit reality.
Yes.
So, and sometimes that's like a blocked path. I can't show you the oak tree down there, because I can't get down there, or it's too steep.
That's a great phrase. That's a Dominic Nichols phrase. That's a really good one. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because it's just a vlog.
Yeah, we've talked about it before because and I've said that's unsatisfying for me because if I want to read that charter and complete it, for want of a better phrase, but complete it like the computer game.
Yeah.
I want to complete it. I want to solve it. I want to solve the puzzle that Grundy couldn't solve. I want to dot every I and cross every T. But you're happy not doing that because you're more realistic than me. As you said, you hit reality.
But they don't really. Some people think, especially if I do a thumbnail in a certain way, people think that I'm giving you a modern version of Tolkien, and the charters don't. The Anglo-Saxon past isn't as interesting as Tolkien, an Anglo-Saxonist, makes out in his fiction. It is all about sheep and and valleys and some of it's garbage. It doesn't relate to reality at all, or cannot be solved.
Yeah.
There's some that several really very clever people have had a go at. That you can't solve them. And there's but it's and some like this one today. I'm absolutely sure that the one I did this morning, that Grundy ignored major pieces of data because it didn't fit with the way his methodology.
Yeah,
and it's so there people like me can come along and say, well, I still can't solve it, but I can say no. In this case, you go along the edge, as the charter says, be edger. By edge,
right?
So go along the edge. So let's see what we see. But I still can't make it go the way I'm going. It goes miles up north, and then it's got to go somewhere where we definitely know it does go. And I don't know how to get it over there.
And I find that absurdly frustrating is the wrong word, but yeah.
But I got 25 minutes of footage out of it, and
can we get
talking?
Yeah. Of course you do. Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Can we get a teaser Your video will probably be out before this podcast goes out, so I'm not even sure what I'm on.
No, it's out
came out this morning.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant you've been doing something this morning.
Yeah.
I thought you meant you've been doing something this morning. Right.
So I'm still on Cold Ashton. I would like to paint a picture of Roman Bath with putting all this stuff together, but it's so very, very difficult. And that's, for me, you're saying that the bigger picture, the thesis, for me, it is possible, and I think with the mapping it's possible to do this, is to take stuff that I've done in the past, my vlogs, and take the data from that and add it to a bigger map. Yeah. And that becomes a bigger theory of Dark Age England, Southwest England might be my thesis.
That's gold though, Tom, to me. That's like, wow. No, find me someone else that's done anything even close to that. In viewable, tangible form like that. No one.
I've got limitations. I need a better laptop, for example. So my maps, they can only get so big. Yeah. So I want to show on this last one. I wanted to show up deep into Gloucestershire, to show where all the salt paths are, and to show how this Saltire path joins them.
Saltire. Is it Saltire?
Saltire Port.
Saltire.
That's just transport of salt, right?
Yeah. So it's a highway for salt.
Yeah. So it was the old highway system. It was a trading route, basically.
But only the theory is they all go to Droitwich.
Yeah.
And this one does join up with a road that goes to Droitwich.
Yeah.
So what it tells us is where the salt's being manufactured and where the markets are. So that's something that heading towards Berkshire. So most of the salt ways go from the Midlands, Droitwich, and then head down towards the Thames.
So these were quite high up paths then, weren't they? The salt paths.
Anything. I've come across one that goes across through Cirencester, goes to Lechlade, Thames.
Yes, yeah. So it's mapping that would help somebody who's doing a PhD in things like in the economy of Anglo-Saxon England.
Yeah.
Just to be able to, that would add to knowledge. To be able to show where it's being manufactured, where it's being marketed, and how it's done. So the theory is it goes down to Lechlade or the Cricklade.
Cricklade, yeah.
I can't remember which one it is, but and then goes along on boats along the Thames.
Yeah.
So what a interesting picture that is.
Yeah.
And we know also there are ponds along the way, along those routes, that are called the Salters Ponds and things like that. I know at least 2 that do that. It's just
so. Really naive question. Salt, literally salt.
Yeah.
Going that way why was it not going the other way?
Well, it's
salt.
We're probably talking about a period later on where London and Winchester are becoming really important. Urbanisation's happening. So when you've got a market that's demanding, and it's true today as it was then, demanding something in bulk, and you can supply it.
Where are you supplying salt from? Where are you supplying salt from?
From they must have salt flats in Droitwich, so they've done archaeology on it, so they know it's we're getting to Midlands now, so it's a bit too far away from me, but it's so they're doing. I presume they're just evaporating seawater,
because
or whatever.
Yeah, because my experience of that is 1722. Wagonway in Scotland, one of the first wagonways in Britain, and it was purely to get salt from the coast. It was like Edinburgh, just along from Edinburgh. Huge salt pans, as you say, evaporating, making salt. But I'm thinking, hang on a minute, a lot of the salt ways I've looked at, as you say, go from Welsh, sort of Southern Wales across. So salt plains.
Well, maybe it went further. Who knows? But I mean, you're starting to make me think. Well, where do they get the salt water
that's
from?
What I think. Yeah, that's exactly.
Maybe there's great big lumps of. I mean, there are places where there are rocks of salt, aren't there?
That's all I can think of. Maybe somewhere in Wales there was a lot of.
How tidal is the Severn? How far does the seawater go up?
Yeah, good point.
So I don't know.
I'm feeling very outclassed by YouTubers here because my last YouTube video I was screaming at some frogs in a glacier of but you two did do a video together, and within that video you were using, and I want to quiz you probably both on this, the Hooper's method of dating a hedgerow.
Yeah.
Please describe it. It sounds fascinating.
Well, it's if you know you've got an old hedge, and there's various ways you're going to. If you look at an 18th century map and it shows a hedge, and you go there and you count the number of species across 30 yards of woody species, including rosy.
So things like hazel
rose.
and I think you found gooseberry or something in one of the videos.
No,
that was probably a
count.
miss.
That's what threw me. The fact that it didn't count wooded, and I was very disappointed by that because, like Tom, there's a daffodil.
So these are
whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, so these are long-standing residential species of,
but including foreign species like sycamores. So
okay.
So they've been around for 500 years, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean they were around we're saying they were around in Anglo-Saxon period. We're saying their appearance 500 years ago was part of the process of a hedge naturalising, and it gives us. I'm not an expert, but I've done a few now, and the vast majority of hedges that I check have between 1 and 3 species in.
Yeah.
But because I'm cherry picking. I'm looking for Anglo-Saxon hedges. I'm looking for medieval hedges.
Yeah.
Medieval parks and stuff like that. Because I'm looking for them, I tend to come out with a number within a couple of 100 years of what I'm looking for.
So what's the actual formula, roughly speaking?
So it's 110 years per species, and then add 30 to the lot for a total.
Okay, so if you find 3 species, it's roughly 360 years. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. I'm going to have to start doing that.
The most spectacular one was the one we did with me and Darren did, and it was like we were looking for an Anglo-Saxon hedge, and it was like 900.
You had like 800 plus years, didn't you?
It was 900.
Right.
Wow. It was something or other. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what it was. But it was a really large number where they were speaking Anglo-Saxon when it was first planted.
Wow! But it's over 30 yards, right?
Yeah.
30 yards is the okay.
Yeah. So it's absolutely fascinating, but it's very difficult at the moment to actually. We need some leaves on the trees. Really desperately.
Yeah.
It seems to be New South Oxfordshire. I'm going to start calling it New South Oxfordshire. Just to avoid getting my house flamed by the Berkshire yeomanry. But it's getting quite green where we are. But when I drove down through Hampshire, over the Hampshire Downs, it still looks very wintry.
It's Hampshire's hell, isn't it?
It is.
We're still very strewn of anything.
Yeah, green. Primitive. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
that too.
No, it's just an observation this morning that it seems spring's come slightly early for South Oxfordshire and a bit late for Hampshire, North Hampshire. Yeah. It's really strange.
Speaking of observations, we're 45 minutes into this podcast and Tom hasn't insulted either Didcot or Andover yet. I'm a little bit disappointed.
I would support him in either.
Well, I have to say Andover is hell on earth, and please don't invite me again. It's appalling.
If you disagree, please leave a comment.
I spent an hour here this morning. I looked at a poster that said Andover, a story of overspill, and I thought, how on earth can you be proud of that? Who wrote that?
Do you know what? There's some. I mean, I agree. There's a whole thing in the museum at the moment about the overspill.
Overspill from what?
London overspill town.
Well, they came all the way. They wanted to get away from London that badly. They came to Andover.
Well, not only did they come, but they brought their businesses. Stanner Stairlifts, Twining's Tea, all London overspill businesses that came. And for probably 10 years, they were literally tribal fights in this town from the new Londoners for the old school. It was 10 years of the council trying to get these guys to say, right, it's okay, calm down. But every new estate on Andover from 1967, 68 onwards is full of London overspill.
That is quite interesting.
And we've got quite a Cockney twang to the Andover.
Southampton has as well.
Yeah, Southampton.
Right.
Didcot. Exactly the same.
Is it the same? Is it really?
And the irony is they name the new streets because we've got house building in South Oxfordshire. It's more aggressive than anywhere else in the country at the moment.
Yeah.
And Didcot has doubled in size since I moved there in 2000, 2001, something like that. And they ironically, they name all the new estate streets after what they destroyed to make them. Cherry Blossom.
We were uneventful. We just did River Way, Pilgrim's Way, Admiral's Way, King Arthur's Way, and it's just full of...
But it's all advertised as country living. And you think, well, okay, you're now with 35,000 other people all living in identical looking houses. It doesn't feel very rural now. It did when I moved. And the same with Marcham, the village where I grew up. I'd love to know that. It's probably marsh. I will.
You can't look it up. I'm not going to hazard a guess.
No.
It's the first rule.
Someone said it was the place where the wild celery grows or something. But when I lived there, it was a small village.
Yeah.
It was real. Now it's I'm not saying it's ruined. I'm saying it's changed. So you've got lots of estates. You've got more people. You've got a very vibrant community there now because of that. You've got a nice big sort of hall where everyone meets for a bacon butty on a Saturday morning. But it doesn't have that kind of Oxfordshire village feel about it anymore. It does feel a little bit more kind of urban. And that seems to be the way things are going. Yeah.
Well, we've got some quirks. We've got if you did pop down 300 yards down that way, there's an old sundial on the wall, and it's got the old coaching times and how you have to set your clock in advance. The Quicksilver, London to Plymouth.
Right.
Pass through.
Yeah, I did see a car with Quicksilver written in the back window.
Did you?
So that's probably
There
related
you
to
go,
that.
that's it.
Yeah.
A little hat tip to the past.
A little hat tip to the past. Yeah, it's probably a historian, right?
Oh, totally, yeah. We've got a lot of those around here.
Yeah, I'm not. I quite like Andover. I think it's got some lovely countryside around it, and a lot of your videos are based, especially when you're looking at Roman roads and such like. And
yeah, we've got a few
you've got
old
Shoot
routes.
Causeway and
Shoot Causeway, yeah.
it's very very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
We got the Ridgeway, but it's not. It's probably not the most picturesque part of the Ridgeway, but we do have the Ridgeway.
It keeps dragging us back to that Ridgeway. It's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenally interesting. But
Well, I think that the whole Lowbury Hill area for me is, in my mind, becoming a persistent place because the layers of history you've got there. You've got the potentially Battle of Ashdown there, 871. Then you go back, you got the Roman the Roman villa building on the top of the hill, and some of the field systems are really interesting. I noticed from the drone, the top of Streety Warren, you'll interpret it far better than I can, but there's some very interesting lynchets that sort of curve around the head of the valley there. And I did take again pictures for Historic England, sent them as requested, and I haven't actually heard since, but But it's an amazing place. And then further on, you've got the Aldworth with, the giants and all of that. So, and the bell, of course. Reference a recent Tweedy video.
Yeah. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And that's also poses. That place is called West Ridge.
Yes.
Isn't it? And it is on a ridge, and it has a road on it. And it is it's. I mean, this is one of my things is taking away the joy out of landscape archaeology by pointing out that there isn't just one Ridgeway. There's a whole it's all, people didn't just need to get from Avebury to Goring. They were going all over the place, and the story of each ridge is just as interesting. No, it's not. It's not, because you've got a Saxon prince next to a Roman. Yeah, sorry. No. Yeah, I know, but every time I open my mouth about this, I take somebody's magic away.
But you're right.
And it's terrible.
But it is, as you sort of allude to, it's kind of an organic growth of a series of tracks that people naturally gravitated towards for all-round viewing. So with the Ridgeway, for example, the reason it runs along high up is because if you've got your trade with you, be it livestock or whatever, you want to see people coming from a long way off, but you also want a route that isn't too steep, so it generally follows the top along.
I always think Sexbury is a good example of the Ridgeway, because I don't think there was any dwellings. Maybe I'm wrong, but in terms of one of those hill forts where actually it was probably more of a marketplace that were right on the,
Well, Sexbury's really big for a start. So it's not one of these places, it's not like a defensive hill fort high up on the peak of a hill with a massive ditch and bank. It's got a ditch and bank, but clearly, it wasn't as sort of military style defence, but it affords the space inside to do a lot of things. And I think your probably onto something there, that it was maybe a very important trading place.
Yeah, I feel like
along the Ridgeway.
Yeah.
I think Warren Brand called it a service station.
Yeah,
But which
Love
works.
it.
But and maybe there was a sort of, it could have been, people needed places to store things, right? Store livestock and so on and so forth, and feed and everything. So maybe Segsbury. I mean, maybe Tom knows better.
Now we come back to the question you posed: where's the water coming from? And it's still. It's still a question. It's still an open question. It's so even like you're saying, you're driving your livestock across the Ridgeway. Twice a day, you're going to have to drive them all the way down to the bottom and take them to the river. And so how convenient was the Ridgeway?
Well, maybe there's a place like Segsbury where one would go to with livestock, pay someone to go and get the water, refresh, and then go on to the next one. So it could be, as Warren said, it could be kind of a equivalent of a service station.
Who's Warren who?
Warren Brand, Linley's 360. There are, Warren. I've given you a plug there. So Warren's the gentleman I go wild.
I thought you were recording. Have I been swearing?
So for people listening and watching, Tom has only just realised that we've been recording.
This is just a preamble.
This is just a preamble beforehand. Yes. So Linley's 360. So he does a variety of things. So he's got a garden railway, very, very interesting garden railway. He also goes on pub crawls with real ale and steam shows. He's got a Hillman Imp which he takes to various shows, and I know I'm plugging him here, but but he and I, the main connection I have with him is that once, maybe twice a month, he and I go to Brecon Beacons and camp on top of a mountain and see if we can survive, which is quite interesting.
I think you're mad.
I'm with you there, Tom.
Yeah,
I can't watch it. It's like it's with Tweedy when he'll take us camping, and it's when he's actually like settling down for the night. I can't watch.
Tweedy's worse, right? But Tweedy is worse than you in the sense that he doesn't look prepared. Like he's there in a shirt. He's got his button undone down here like this. And he's in just a jacket, and I'm like,
it's quite a sight, isn't it? A gentleman in a tweed suit and a hedge.
Wrap up, well, go put some gloves and a scarf on, boy, Tweedy. And
we wear these kind of, we wear down jackets, and down jackets are very warm. Yeah. And I think Warren's even got down trousers, and then we've got down sleeping bag, and then we've got these, sort of Himalayan grade tents that are designed for base camp.
The Tweedy doesn't do that. Tweedy
throws up a little tent and
he's crazy.
He does everything on the hoof, doesn't he? So I don't know if I should go home if there's a town near. It's getting dark. I think I'll start cooking. He
certainly gives that appearance.
It's hell. Honestly, I can remember like having to sleep in a ditch. When I in my 20s. After a long walk home from the pub. And it's just hell.
But I will say, with the camping, the wild camping we do, I mean, we are very comfortable. We've got proper.
But so am I, with a lampshade, a TV, a bit of Wi-Fi.
Not having to carry 20 kilograms up a mountain on your back.
I've had to carry them up in one flight.
But it's amazing how you go from 1 minute you're carrying, as I say, about 44-pound rucksack up a mountain, and for someone like me especially, that's a real strain. Out of breath, your eyes are running, the sun's going down, and then half an hour later you're lying down having a hot chocolate, having a meal, and just relaxing for another 14 to 17 hours.
Yeah, now I'm thinking,
hell, 14, 17 hours.
In the dark. I'm thinking, I need a wee.
With frogs.
Okay, right, I need a wee. I need more than a wee. Crikey, how am I doing this? Oh, get your...
okay. Well, we won't go into too much detail on that, but there is a distinct lack of bathroom facilities in every place that we go, but I'm not going to indulge you in that. I'm sorry.
That's for another episode.
I haven't asked anything of you. You've just basically asked.
Well, you're the guest. So you're the guest.
Now I'm terrified. Yeah. Go on then.
Well, I'm just complaining. I haven't. So do you have infrared on your drone?
I don't know. So I've got the Mavic 3 Pro. Which is a big drone, big heavy drone, and there's a version of it called the Enterprise version, and that you can customize it with different attachments. You can even get a remote loudspeaker. How cool would that be? I think they probably use those for anti-fox hunting and stuff like that. Quite good. But my version of it, it's got Spotlight. and that's about it. But and a really good camera, really, you know, 4/3 sensor camera on it, which is good.
Oh,
but
full frame?
It's no, it's not full frame. It's 4/3.
Right.
But it's a Hasselblad camera, so it's pretty good. But no, I haven't got the infrared. I could have used it a lot because I've been asked to look for lost dogs and stuff around local fields. I said the one the other week that there was someone had lost a dog in West Ilsley, and so I sent the drone all around the outside of the village, looking every hedgerow I could. I probably covered a couple of 100 acres just looking for this thing. And then halfway through, I realised I didn't actually have a description of the dog. And when they told me it was a greyhound and that it had just been found the other side of Swindon.
Did it really?
Yeah, greyhounds, they move pretty quickly. Yeah.
Poor thing.
So, but yeah, had I had infrared, maybe would have caught it earlier on. So, in fact, there is a website. The name escapes me because I'm so bad on names, which is specifically for finding lost dogs. So if there's one in my area, I'll get a notification. Yeah. And obviously, if I'm working at Heathrow, I can't. But if I'm in and I've got nothing to do, then I will go out with a drone and hunt for it. And it notifies all the people, the pilots in the area that have signed up to that. It's quite good. Well, you don't get it's a voluntary thing, obviously, but it's one day I will find a lost dog and I'll be very happy.
Yep.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. So Tom, I was asking. Let's ask a very basic question of you. You visited a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Places all the way, like the you're on the Dorset, Gloucestershire border, looking along there. Lowbury Hill itself.
Is there a Dorset Gloucestershire border?
I can't remember. Was it Dorset Gloucestershire?
Oh, there was Somerset in the middle of those
Somerset.
But there might be
Somerset,
you might be close
Gloucestershire
at one
border.
point.
Yeah, I think there's a short border, isn't there? Because Wiltshire gets in the way a little bit. But so, is there a place that's special to you? Is there a place that that entices you to revisit and maybe do another video? Somewhere that naturally draws you back? Somewhere, I think Tweedy called it an atavistic feeling, where when you stand there looking at this landscape, you're getting the same feelings that your ancestors would have done from the same spot.
Well, it's normally Berkshire, but it doesn't have to be on the Ridgeway. But there are, but the sweet spot. There's another sweet spot, and there's all the deer on the Ridgeway. There's some really nice deer tribes up there, and that could be it. I've got one particular type of landmark that I'm really interested in, which is Heathen burialsas, which means heathen burials. Okay. And I like looking for those. There are several of them in the charters.
Heathen burials. Tell us about that.
Well, it's just burials of heathen people. So it'll be pre-Christian burials, but it could also be.
How do they know? Okay,
it could go way to the past.
Well, it could, right?
Yeah. So it could be like Bronze Age barrows, or it could be a cemetery of Romans, or.
But if they're heathens,
they're
going to have a bronze. Or is it? What are we talking? We're talking Anglo-Saxon charters have written down the word heathen.
Yeah. Go to the heathen burials. Then turn left.
Why do they perceive it a heathen, not just a burr or barrow or
it may be just Christian custom that you get buried next to the church. So if there's no church there, then it's or it's tradition. That's where they used to bury people back in the day. You see, there's one very close to Bristol, which is mentioned at least 2 or 3, maybe even 3 charters that meet at that point. And they found the classic water trough that turned out to be a Roman coffin. That was in the field that butts onto that location. Yeah. So but I have had a look under a few stones in that area, seeing can I find a kist. And I can't. There's a slight raise where where they meet. There's a slight raise. It could be a long marrow. But there's nothing on the HER, and it's.
So could they have been referring to something that was it within their period too? Because up other side of Andover, they found a huge punishment ceremony. They called it.
Yeah.
But that was from their own Anglo-Saxon time, I guess.
Oh, I see. That's where you're. Yeah.
So I wonder
could there have been heathens at the same time as they were living?
Yes.
There's suspicion that there was, but I suspect not for very long.
Right.
So the Sutton Hoo burial, he was hedging his bets, There's lots of pagan iconography. I'm pretty sure one of the panels on the helmet is Woden on there, but nonetheless he's a Christian.
Yeah, which
Christian man.
Dr. Alex Langlands
Woden's
said
Barrow.
the same thing, I believe. He linked the two Woden's Dyke with that.
Yeah.
Very much so.
We're looking in that specific area of Wiltshire, really, aren't we? Around Pewsey, Pewsey Downs area, sort of thing.
That's interesting.
But you can see in the poetry that the heroic ideology of the Anglo-Saxons that the Vikings also shared. They had it. The Anglo-Saxons had it in a Christian. They constantly talk about Christ, but yet the atmosphere of the poetry is pagan, and it's almost identical as what you would get from the Vikings. So they had their culture was so they're talking of Christ as a fighter, and all this sort of stuff, and it's not, lots of monsters that are pagan. There are several, elves, giants, Thorneh, which is a type of giant. The Dungeons and Dragons etin is also an Anglo-Saxon word. I've forgotten. It might be Etienne or something like that. I can't remember. But it's all of these things are within Anglo-Saxon poetry and place names.
Yeah.
But it survived the Christian period. But we know virtually nothing about the myths. This is the problem, because the Christianity did stamp it out, which they didn't do with the Vikings. So in Iceland, they were both Christian and kept telling the stories. So which is why we know that, and a couple of things from Denmark is the only reason we know anything about the Viking religion. And it's very probably because of the Frank's casket. There is a beautiful casket that has both Christ on it. Again, this is the hedging bets. Christ on one side, and on the other side you've got Wayland the Smith. And it's because of that panel that shows Wayland the Smith holding a skull cup, which is the skull of a king has imprisoned him, so he's killed the children of that king and made cups out of it. Because just for that one panel, it tells us that myth was the same as the Viking myth. That we shared the religion, the English heathen religion, is very probably very close to the Viking religion.
Yeah,
but it's stuff like that. There's but it's very, very little. We know a little bit about Wayland, and that's about it.
Yeah,
we know Woden was important, but we know nothing about him apart from the fact that you can use him to heal snake bites, and that's about it. So that's one.
Yeah.
That was a charm in a document for in the Christian era to heal, all sorts of things that would afflict you, normal stuff.
Yeah.
And it says for snake bites, Woden took these sticks and healed this, and that's about all we know about Woden.
Yeah.
Is that. And it's all very. We were quite unlucky to lose our deep past.
Yeah.
Whereas the Icelandic people kept theirs.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
So what sort of online resources do you use? I know in your videos nowadays you use some very good LiDAR. And I don't know if maybe you have a cheeky look at the LiDAR before you visit somewhere, or if it's something. Yeah. And of course we had the British Library Museum website down for some time.
Still
as
is.
well.
I tried to look something up and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's still gone. I have a Russian enemy who's stymieing my internet career with their sabotage.
Yeah.
And I just stop it, mister.
Well, I mean, it's that's the point actually. Online resources and websites.
Yeah.
And now they didn't used to be. I mean, you've got a programmer background as well. They're basically attacked left, right, and centre.
Yeah, you couldn't when I first started. You couldn't get in. No. You'd actually have to. Somebody would have to make a mistake.
Yeah. Well, it's a simple closed system.
Yeah,
basically.
entirely.
Yeah.
You would, and then as the years passed, and I had other jobs, but it's let me connect. And I said, no way. And then the boss would say, no, let him connect. And I go, what are you doing? What are you? It's just like there's just a culture change. So we now have systems that are no longer secure. They are massively vulnerable. Why do you need to let people connect it? All you need to do is let them see the information, query it. I want this information. Thank you very much.
But it's all about two-way and interactivity nowadays, and it's
absolute nonsense.
It's a very difficult place to be. I think the internet right now,
or just let them have access to one table, and it's that couldn't do anything important. Storing credit card. Who on earth is doing that? I mean, I know it's all encrypted.
And the thing is, people who want to cause trouble now have a new method of doing it, and that's pretending that they've got personal details. So it might be that a certain provider is accused of someone on the dark web would say something like, well, we've got the customer details from these websites here, and then you sort of call their bluff and you go, well, okay, we have no evidence of that. And then they say, well, here's a sample. But it may or may not be true. It might be just a sample they've constructed. And that's the thing. Hackers now can hold places to account. And I'm not referring to anywhere specific to make that clear. But generally, they can hold places to account just on the hint that they've got customer information, on the fact they might have broken into the website. I mean, I don't know the background of the British Library site, but it's a scary world. Organisations have to account for every possibility, and sometimes that means taking your stuff offline just because someone's bluffed.
But it makes me wonder why it wasn't backed up separately. So that even if they had like a year-old version of the database, why didn't they just bung that back up again? The reason why is because the software has been compromised. So they've got some script in there they can't remove.
No.
And how did they let that happen? It's utter failure of infrastructure is. Sorry, I'm not going to get onto attacks on infrastructure, but it's really annoying to me because I would like to illustrate with the actual real document, the actual parchment. The British Library had digitised loads of them, and it would be beautiful to show that actual parchment.
It'd be an incredible resource.
And also there are questions. There's an example. There was one wood in Oxfordshire, actual Oxfordshire, beyond the Thames, and that it had. I didn't know whether it was Spoonley wood or Swanley wood. Right. Now there's a character, Anglo-Saxon character that looks it's called Wyn, and it looks like a P, and sometimes the scribe would just work too quickly, I really wanted to. I really wanted to look at the original and satisfy my mind that And again, this is to be able to correct the record is to do something really important. But I can't see it. But it was. I did come down on one side or the other. I can't remember which one, but it was somebody else had done the research. But that is something that we can do. There's thousands of documents that, and sometimes academics make mistakes that don't make sense, and you have new evidence, and you can say, well, no, look at it. Look at that bit there, and tell me that I'm not right. I'm not wrong. So
Well, sadly, I think we've been going. Trying to keep these around an hour. I think we're over, but it's been amazing. What I really love in the future, as well as your videos, if you do end up writing a thesis or something, that would be incredible. That would be. I think you're, as you said earlier, you're very uniquely positioned to do that.
A big map.
Yeah, a big map of.
A big map.
Yeah.
My software can't do big maps. This is. I might need. I do everything on the iPad now.
Google Maps. That's on Google Maps. What do they call it? My Google Maps, where you can go and plot your own. That
takes longer than me just taking a drawing program and going like that.
Fair enough.
I want to. I'm reduced to to be able to get enough definition to show people the local situation. I can't show the bigger picture.
You need
It's
someone
really
to do it.
annoying.
You need someone to do it for you, Tom. You need someone to go over your videos over a long period of time and map everything.
Yeah, I know, but then that person would be able to dig up all the mistakes I've made, and I have made a couple. My
Well, that's
Siren
okay,
Sister
then.
one was the worst piece of scholarship that I was literally popping out for a coffee, and I thought I'd show the world, but do a little vlog, and there's at least 2 big mistakes. I just
That's
rubbish.
okay. That's okay. That's,
Absolute rubbish. I
then,
keep having to
then
apologise.
unlist the video. Then unlist
Yeah,
the
I
video.
know, but it makes me 50p every now and again. You know, it's but I'm constantly in the you know, people say, what's this about? I said, no, I was wrong. I apologise.
So, where can, apart from YouTube, where can people find you? Is there a website?
Well,
or?
that's it. That's pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty
so
much where I am.
Allotment Fox on YouTube. Yeah. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. I think it's been absolutely fascinating. So please, any comments, if you're watching this on YouTube, please put any comments below, anything you found interesting today. We're not going to we're breaking from the norm a little bit. We haven't got treasure hunt,
Which is a crying,
which is
shame.
a relief,
so disappointing.
a relief to
Shocking,
most
shocking.
people. And we're not going to read out comments because I've got no internet connection for the last video. But we had a lot of comments on the last video.
Yeah.
But we will resume that next time. But
Yeah, indeed. So, main takeaway, go and subscribe to Tom's
go
channel.
and
'cause
subscribe to Allotment Fox.
it's very-
you will not be disappointed.
No, absolutely.
And above everything as well, even if it's not your area of interest, I find the videos really pleasing and relaxing because of the B-roll and everything. I think it's fantastic.
That's very true.
Yeah,
That's also very
so
good.
Allotment Fox. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for
And
having me.
I look forward to seeing what you do in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Go.
Thank you.